How did the Vikings die? Not the ordinary warriors. Not the nameless raiders who disappeared into history, but the legendary leaders whose names still echo more than 1,000 years later. The men who burned monasteries, conquered kingdoms, crossed oceans, and terrified Europe. Many people imagine Viking leaders dying gloriously in battle, sword in hand, surrounded by enemies. The reality was often stranger. Some were killed by rival kings. Some were betrayed. Some died from disease. One may have died from an infected wound caused by a dead man's tooth. Another vanished completely, leaving behind one of history's greatest mysteries. Tonight, we'll follow the final days of the most famous Viking leaders and discover exactly how they met their end. These are the deaths of history's greatest Vikings. Bjorn Ironside. Before Ragnar's sons became legends, one stood above the rest. Bjorn Ironside. According to Norse tradition, Bjorn was one of Ragnar Lothbrok's most famous sons and became a renowned warrior and explorer. He led raids throughout Western Europe and into the Mediterranean. For Viking warriors, reaching the Mediterranean was almost unimaginable. Yet Bjorn and his men sailed thousands of miles from Scandinavia. They attacked cities in modern-day Spain, France, and Italy. His reputation grew with every victory. But when it comes to his death, history becomes unclear. Unlike many Viking leaders, no reliable contemporary source tells us exactly how Bjorn died. Most accounts suggest he survived into old age and died peacefully in Scandinavia. If true, that would make him unusual among Viking leaders. Rather than dying in battle, Bjorn may have spent his final years as a respected ruler. A massive burial mound in Sweden has traditionally been linked to him. Whether it truly belongs to Bjorn remains debated. But if the tradition is correct, one of history's most feared Vikings died not in war but in the comfort of his homeland. Ivar the Boneless. Few Viking leaders inspired more fear than Ivar the Boneless. He was brilliant, cruel, patient, and incredibly dangerous. Following the death of Ragnar Lothbrok, Ivar became one of the leaders of the Great Heathen Army. This massive Viking force invaded Anglo-Saxon England in the 9th century. Kingdom after kingdom fell before them. Entire regions were devastated. Ivar's enemies describe him as a terrifying strategist. Unlike many Viking warriors, he often relied on intelligence and planning rather than brute force. For years he seemed unstoppable. Then, suddenly, he disappeared from the historical record. Most historians believe he died around the year 873. The exact cause remains uncertain. Some sources suggest illness. Others imply natural causes. Archaeologists have even discovered a high-status burial in England that some researchers believe could belong to Ivar. If so, he was buried with great honor. The man who helped reshape England likely died in bed rather than on the battlefield. A surprising ending for one of history's most feared conquerors. Halfdan Ragnarsson. While Ivar focused on conquest, his brother Halfdan pursued power. Halfdan was another key commander of the Great Heathen Army. He fought across England and eventually became king of Northumbria. For a time, he appeared destined to build a lasting Viking kingdom. But Viking politics were brutal. Alliances shifted constantly. Friends became enemies overnight. In 877, Halfdan launched a campaign into Ireland. There he encountered rival Norse forces. The result was disaster. At the Battle of Strangford Lough, Halfdan was killed. The exact details remain unknown. What we do know is that one of the most powerful Viking rulers of his generation died fighting fellow Vikings. Not English kings. Not Christian armies. Other Norsemen. It was a reminder that Viking society could be just as dangerous from within as from outside. Ubba Ragnarsson. Another legendary son of Ragnar was Ubba. Like his brothers, Ubba played a major role in the Viking invasions of England. He developed a reputation as a fierce warrior and commander. But unlike Ivar, Ubba preferred direct combat. He thrived on the battlefield. That preference eventually cost him his life. In 878, Viking forces under Ubba confronted Anglo-Saxon defenders in what is now Devon, England. The battle turned against the Vikings. Ubba was killed during the fighting. His army suffered devastating losses. According to tradition, a famous Viking banner known as the Raven Banner was captured. For Viking warriors, losing such a sacred symbol was a catastrophe. Ubba died doing exactly what he had spent his life doing, fighting at the front of an army. Rollo. Not every Viking leader died violently. Rollo is one of the best examples. Originally a Viking raider, Rollo eventually became ruler of Normandy in France. His descendants would change European history forever. One of them was William the Conqueror. Instead of endlessly raiding, Rollo adapted. He embraced political power. He negotiated. He ruled. He built. In many ways, he represented the transformation of Viking society. The warrior became a statesman. The raider became a ruler. Historical records suggest Rollo died naturally around 930. For a Viking leader, that was an extraordinary achievement. He survived countless dangers and lived long enough to establish a dynasty that would influence Europe for centuries. Eric Bloodaxe. Few Viking nicknames sound more intimidating than Eric Bloodaxe. Whether he earned the name through battlefield skill or later storytelling remains debated. But his reputation was fierce. Eric became king of Norway before being forced into exile. Like many ambitious rulers, he spent much of his life fighting rivals. Eventually, he found power again in England. Yet his position remained unstable. Enemies surrounded him. In 954, Eric met his end. Most accounts suggest he was killed in battle. Some claim he was ambushed. Others suggest a larger military confrontation. Regardless of the details, Eric died as many Vikings expected to die. Sword in hand. Facing enemies. The violent life of Eric Bloodaxe ended with a violent death. Hastion. If Viking leaders had a category for survival, Hastion would win. He spent decades raiding Europe. Decades. Most Viking warriors never survived that long. Hastion fought across France, Spain, and the Mediterranean. He participated in elaborate schemes and daring campaigns. One famous story claims he tricked defenders into allowing him into a city by pretending to be dead. Whether true or not, it reflects his reputation for cunning. Yet despite all his adventures, historians don't know exactly how Hastion died. The sources simply fade away. After a lifetime of warfare, one of the Viking world's greatest survivors disappears from history. No dramatic final battle. No legendary last stand. Just silence. Olaf Tryggvason. Olaf Tryggvason became king of Norway and aggressively promoted Christianity. This earned him powerful enemies. Many rulers resented his growing influence. In the year 1000, a coalition formed against him. His enemies included Scandinavian rivals and foreign powers. The fleets met at the Battle of Svolder. Olaf fought fiercely. As the battle turned against him, escape became impossible. According to traditional accounts, Olaf chose death over capture. Some stories claim he jumped into the sea. Others suggest he was killed during the fighting. His body was never conclusively identified. The uncertainty helped transform Olaf into legend. A king swallowed by the sea. A ruler whose final moments remain mysterious. Sweyn Forkbeard. Sweyn Forkbeard achieved something many Vikings only dreamed about. He conquered England. By 1013, he had become King of England. It was the culmination of years of warfare and ambition. Yet his triumph was short-lived. Only weeks after securing the throne, Sweyn died unexpectedly. The cause remains uncertain. Some sources suggest illness. Others describe sudden natural causes. Medieval writers later added supernatural explanations. One legend claimed a saint struck him down. Whatever happened, Sweyn's reign lasted only a matter of weeks. One of the greatest victories in Viking history was followed almost immediately by death. Thorkel the Tall. Thorkel the Tall was among the most famous Viking warriors of his age. He served kings, led armies, changed sides when it suited him, and survived conflicts that killed countless others. Unlike many Viking leaders, his death is poorly documented. Historical records simply stop mentioning him. Most historians assume he died naturally sometime during the 11th century. It's a surprisingly ordinary ending for a man who spent decades in extraordinary circumstances. Canute the Great. Canute the Great created a North Sea empire. At its height, he ruled England, Denmark, and Norway. Few Viking leaders ever achieved so much. Canute was not merely a warrior. He was a skilled politician and administrator. He understood that ruling kingdoms required more than military victories. After years of successful leadership, Canute died in 1035. The most likely cause was illness. His death triggered political instability throughout his empire. Without his leadership, the vast realm he had built gradually fragmented. His greatest enemy was not a rival king. It was mortality itself. Harald Hardrada. If any Viking leader deserves a cinematic ending, it is Harald Hardrada. Many historians consider him the last great Viking king. His life was extraordinary. He fought in Eastern Europe, served in the Byzantine Empire, accumulated immense wealth, became king of Norway, and finally attempted to conquer England. In 1066, Harold invaded England with a powerful army. At first, the campaign looked promising. Then came the Battle of Stamford Bridge. English forces under King Harold Godwinson launched a surprise attack. The battle was brutal. During the fighting, Harold was struck in the throat by an arrow. He died on the battlefield. His army collapsed. Many historians view Stamford Bridge as the symbolic end of the Viking Age. The last great Viking king died chasing one final conquest. Leif Erikson. Unlike many leaders on this list, Leif Erikson is remembered more for exploration than warfare. He became one of the first Europeans known to reach North America. His voyages expanded the Viking world beyond anything previously imagined. Yet his death remains largely unknown. Historical records provide very few details. Most historians believe he died naturally in Greenland. No epic battle. No dramatic final stand. Just the quiet end of a remarkable explorer. Ragnar Lothbrok. No Viking story is complete without Ragnar. Whether every tale about him is true remains debated. But his legend shaped Viking history. According to tradition, Ragnar was eventually captured by King Arella of Northumbria. Arella sought revenge for Viking attacks. The punishment was brutal. Ragnar was allegedly thrown into a pit filled with snakes. As the snakes bit him, Ragnar supposedly delivered a final speech predicting revenge. Whether the story is historical or legendary remains uncertain. What matters is what happened afterward. The tale inspired generations. And according to tradition, it motivated Ragnar's sons to launch devastating invasions of England. Even in death, Ragnar changed history. The deaths of Viking leaders reveal an important truth. The Viking Age was not simply an era of endless battlefield glory. Some leaders died fighting. Some died from illness. Some vanished into mystery. Some achieved extraordinary power only to lose everything in a single moment. Yet all of them shared one thing. Their names survived. More than 1,000 years later, we still remember them. Not because of how they died, but because of how they lived. They crossed oceans, built kingdoms, destroyed kingdoms, changed continents, and left behind stories that refused to disappear. The Viking Age eventually ended, but the legends never did. If you enjoyed this journey into the final moments of history's greatest Viking leaders, subscribe to Painful Histories for more stories about the brutal realities of the past. Because history is never more fascinating than when we discover how legends meet their end.